Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome on this Monday afternoon in Los Angeles, California, wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to be talking about today the H1B L J H2B updates to the suspension that President Trump put in place. And also there's been a couple changes to the overall travel ban to the United States. So we're going to cover all those things. I wanted to do a live video to get out to all of you who it's absolutely critical that you know this immediately, as soon as possible. And wanted to do a live one so you get the information ASAP and you don't have to wait for me to do a video and post it and all that good stuff. So here I am and ready to get into it. Remember, if you're new to me or you're joining this later and you've never seen any of my videos and you're not a subscriber already, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss any future updates, future videos. I do lots of videos on all different type of immigration topics, tips, pointers, news updates. My job is to keep you as informed as possible and to give you the education that you need to be successful in whatever type of immigration needs you need or your family needs. Okay, so let's get into it. Another housekeeping thing I want to make sure I let you know right away is if you post any comments on this live chat, during the live chat, it will not be able to be responded to after the live chat goes and gets published. So if you're going to do any kind of posting during the live chat, you want to make sure that you put those comments again below this actual video so I can respond to them afterwards, because I can't respond during the video, but we might do some Q&A at the end depending on how many people join us and how many comments we have or questions we have. So if you do have questions, don't forget to put them during the live feed and we'll see if we can get to them. And otherwise, put lots of comments below. I always respond to my comments. I always am here to help you get the information that you need. If I don't know it immediately, I will get it as soon as I get the information for you, I promise. Okay, let's get started. So here we are with all these suspensions and everything going on. Here we are. And the good news is, which I want to start off with something positive here, is that as some of you might be aware, there was a huge ban on international students that were doing all live, not in-person classes that got overturned this past week. And now that is no longer the case. So that was a really good step in the right direction with all the news that we're dealing with these days. It was kind of nice to see that there was a step back on something. So I'm hoping, and I'm sure all of you out there are hoping too, that this is a trend in the right direction, that now some of the proclamations and executive orders and rules that have been put into place or are being put into place, once the people hear it and they respond to it and they realize, and the government or whoever's putting it in place realizes that it's not beneficial to the situation, then it will be walked backwards and it will be modified or fixed to actually fit the reality, or as close as we can get them to the reality of how bad we need immigrants in the United States, non-immigrants and immigrants. With that being said, let's jump into it and get into some of these changes or these modifications that just came down this past weekend. And I want to get to you so you know if it applies to you and it will help you get where you need to be. So first and foremost, as we all know, President Trump put into place a number of travel bans across the world in different areas, in Schengen areas, in the UK, in Ireland, all different types of areas around the world. And there was actually a statement that turned back a little bit of that. And I'm looking at my notes during this because I want to make sure I get exactly the information that I need to give to you, because this is brand new right off the presses and I don't want to say it in a way that's going to be inaccurate to what is actually being said by the Department of State. So what they're doing is that they are actually still qualifying people to apply for national interest waivers to the travel ban. So if you need to get into the US and you don't qualify of one of the exceptions, which I can go into great deal, or I already went into great detail on the travel bans in another video that you can see. It's called Travel Bans Explained. I'll put a link down in the description below this video after we're done, but that will go into all the details of what the travel ban includes and the exceptions to it. But these are just the changes to that actual travel ban. So they are still allowing the national interest waivers. So if you have a reason and that's in the national interest that you need to get to the United States, you still can apply for that. But the big change, which relates to students and what happened last week with regard to international students, is that now if you have an F1 visa or an M1 visa, then you don't have to qualify for the exception to the travel ban. You will be able to come into the United States, which is a huge thing for a lot of areas in the Shenzhen area, especially in other areas, that if you have an F1 visa or an M1 visa, you shouldn't have to apply for the exception or a national interest waiver or anything to the actual travel ban. So that's a big move in the right direction for students, not only students at universities, but also M1 students. So that's a big one. And they're asking, or the US is basically asking the EU to follow suit on their travel bans on their side, allowing a cross agreement between the two sides to allow for students to have access to the United States. So I'm hoping that that's a trend in the right direction. Okay. Next, let's talk a little bit about the H1B, the L visa, the J visa, and the H2B visas that were recently suspended. So if you're not aware of all the details of it, there's also another video I did that goes into excessive detail about that actual proclamation that President Trump put out. And you can see that on my YouTube channel. Again, I'll put the link below in the description so you can check that out if you want more information. But the basics is if you do not have, or you did not have a L visa, an H1B visa, a J visa, or an H2B visa in your passport, and you're outside the United States, by June 24th, then you weren't able to get one and come into the United States to work, except for some very limited situations or exceptions to that rule. So that was the overall rule that went into place. And now they've stepped back and they've clarified this past weekend and a few more exceptions that they're giving on that. One, let's start with the J1 visas. So the J1 visa, there was big changes to the au pair portion of it. So a lot of au pairs are here or are coming in on J1 visas. So au pairs, if they're coming in to provide services or to watch minor US citizens, lawful permanent residents, or non-immigrant visa holder minors, and they have special skills required to take care of those people. Like, for example, medically, they have special skills medically to take care of them, or they're hearing impaired and they know sign language, or there's special education issues that are involved that they have special skills to take care of these children, then they can apply for an exception to the ban to the end of the year. That's one. Another au pair situation that's now allowed is au pairs whose work would avoid a US citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or a non-immigrant visa holder not become a public charge or ward of the state. So if their work would avoid that person becoming a public charge or ward of the state, then they'll allow them in. For example, if they have to be then hospitalized because that au pair is not here to provide those services, then there would be a reason for them to be able to get the visa and enter the United States. Child care services for parents that are dealing with COVID-19. So healthcare professionals, if you are an au pair for a medical physician or a researcher that's at the front lines dealing with COVID-19 issues, and you're taking care of their children, right? You're providing services to the children, to parents of, to these people, then you would be able to get a waiver from the suspension on being able to come in through the end of the year. U.S. trainees and interns that work for government-sponsored agencies, that's another one that they added. And specialized teachers in certain programs, that's a new one that they added. So if you're a teacher in a program and it's a specialized program on a school campus, then you could probably get a waiver. You just have to show your specialized skills and details about that actual program. And then you would probably be able to get a waiver on this H1B L J suspension that's going on to the end of the year. And make sure, though, that program you have to teach full-time and has to be substantially in-person teaching. So it can't be like, it's all on the internet, because that's not going to go. It's got to be that substantially that you're doing in-person teaching under these programs. So that is the J1 exceptions to the rules. Let's move on to the L1 changes that are critical for everyone to know. The big L1 change is that workers that are coming into the United States to work, or I'm going to read this directly if it says, for public health or healthcare professionals or researchers to alleviate the effects of COVID-19 or ongoing research in an area with a substantial public health benefit. Now, that is expanding the definition of what you can do. It's not just research or work related to COVID-19 directly, but any other health benefit. So in later on, you'll see when I talk about the H1B exceptions that they put in, is that it has to do with like research or work with cancer patients or communicable diseases, because as you are aware, clearly, that COVID-19 affects substantially people with these other diseases or these other issues that are going on that are maybe secondary to the COVID, or they have them and they're here and they want people to deal with those because that might lead them to be more susceptible to getting the COVID-19. So I think that that was a very smart expansion to not only allow medical professionals and researchers in that are dealing directly with COVID-19 patients, but also dealing with anyone that's kind of surrounding it, or anyone with a health benefit, in my opinion, but they're allowing it for anyone that's around it. And they mentioned specifically cancer research or medical professionals dealing with cancer patients or communicable diseases. Okay. Not lastly, but next we're going to talk about the H1B exceptions, which a lot of you out there are probably really anxious to know if there's anything that applies to you. So the suspension dealt with if you did not have an H1B visa in your passport as of June 24, 2020. Now, if you're in the United States, remember, I'm going to repeat this again. If anyone's watching and did not understand this or did not get this, if you're inside the United States and you're doing extension or change of status, you are fine. This suspension does not apply to you. It applies to people that are outside the United States. So really important to know, really important to remember when you're reading these suspensions and understanding if they apply to you or not. Now, what they have done now is, like with the L visa, they've taken the H1B exception and they expanded it to now be related to anybody who's has an H1B or going to get an H1B to work in the medical field as a researcher or as a medical service provider, a doctor, a nurse, or anyone related to the medical field that not only deals with COVID-19 patients or COVID-19 in general, but anyone that deals in the area of public health benefits, meaning cancer or communicable diseases. Those are the two that they list, but the list I'm sure is a lot more expansive that you can attribute this exception to. But they do list cancer and communicable diseases. So like I said a second ago about the L visa, it's the same thing applies to this, that it's because it's more than just COVID-19 we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that are immune compromised or have other issues that are more susceptible to COVID-19. So why would we stop physicians and research going on for these other issues, which either they're going to have more of an issue with because of COVID-19 or they're more exposed because they have the issue already. So I think it's a very smart expansion of that language for the medical professionals that are coming here on H1B that we absolutely need. Another thing that they added was to meet the critical U.S. foreign policy objectives or to satisfy a treaty or contractual obligation. So if you're coming in on H1B to deal with a treaty obligation or contractual obligation related to a U.S. government agency or entity, that would also qualify. But remember, the suggestion they have, the example that they gave us is IT support services for government agencies or projects essential to the government. So it's not just anything. It would be related to something that is critical to right now, that to a government agency or entity, and then they would have to substantiate that it is critical to them now, to a government agency or entity. Not only the individual applicant, but also the agency would probably have to give evidence and documentation that it is critical that this person comes in. Now the same expansion happened on the H2B side, and the example they used was expanding or building military bases. Like military base construction would be something that would be beneficial or important to a U.S. government agency or entity under the H2B program. So if you are related or have work related to an agency, government agency, or entity, then you want to look at possibly what exactly are you doing or being asked to do, and would that fall under one of these new exceptions or this expansion of exceptions? Okay. So lastly, and really importantly, is the big one, is to spouses and children and dependents of H1Bs, Ls, and Js. What happened in the last weeks after this whole June 24th or June 22nd, when President Trump came out with this proclamation stopping or suspending these visa holders from coming to the United States, what happened was there was a big surge of like, well, wait a minute, what if I'm outside the United States and my spouse is in the United States already on an H1B? So that means that me and my children are going to sit outside the United States for who knows how long, maybe to the end of the year or 2021, while my spouse is in the United States working under an H1B. So that means that I can't get my visa. I mean, so that was a big issue. And there was a lawsuit filed regarding this issue. And thankfully, what happened was the government came back, the Department of State and the executive branch came back and said, okay, if your spouse is in the United States already on an H1B visa, then you can come in or you can get the visa to join them. Also, remember, if one of the spouses or the principal applicant, meaning the spouse that's holding the principal visa, the H1B or the L1 or the J1, if they qualify for a waiver, national interest exception, or something that would allow them to get around these rules, these proclamations, then the dependent family members can also get that same exception. So it doesn't just apply to the principal applicant, it applies to all the family coming with them. So they could all apply for the same exception. So those are two huge changes that were devastating to a lot of families out there, because a lot of times, you know, I'm in the United States working, my family goes back, let's say to Italy to visit family for a break. COVID happens, this whole thing happens, and now I can't get back into the country even though I'm a spouse or a child of an H1B worker that's fine in the US and not subject to this suspension. So that would force me not even to be able to come in. So this was a big step in the right direction. Now, with that being said, you still need the consulates to be open, right? So the consulates still have to be open in order to get the visas. So I think that there's an issue with, you know, the practicality of it and the reality of it. So the good news is that you can now, if you are a spouse or a dependent of an H1B that's in the United States, you can go ahead and apply to get the visa. But if you can't get an appointment, then you need to try to expedite it, explaining that your spouse is in the United States and that you need to get there, and hopefully you'll be able to get that expedite. Otherwise, you have to wait till the consulates start processing applications, which a lot of consulates around the world, just so you are aware, are slowly starting to reopen and process applications. So that's really important. There's some countries that are still absolutely not, but there's a lot of countries that are slowly reopening their applications, their offices to in-person applications and in-person interviews for visas. So that's a positive also. So what I want to make sure that everyone understands is, wanted to get this information to you ASAP. It's not a huge amount of information, but it's very important information to a lot of people that are holding H1Bs or waiting to get H1Bs, or people that were waiting to get J visas and that were absolutely denied. And now there's a little glimmer of hope if you're certain types of individuals. Also, individuals that are taking care of US citizens or lawful permanent residents, very important that they are able to come into the country also. Hoping that in the next weeks, hopefully not months, but hopefully in the next weeks, there'll be more step back in realization. Because why also this whole issue came out with regard to the dependents being able to get visas was that the whole argument for not allowing the H's and the L's and the J's and everyone to come in is to give the US citizens that are unemployed the leg up on being able to get back in the workforce without that extra competition. But the ridiculous thing about it was that the H dependents and the L dependents and these other, well, not the L's, because L's can work, the spouses, but the H dependents especially, and the J's, they can't even work in the United States. So it was like, why were you not allowing them in when they can't even work here. So they're being forced to stay outside the country when they can't even work in the United States and take a job supposedly of a US citizen in the United States. So it's very good that the logic is slowly coming out after the fact. We wish it would come out before the fact, but at least it's coming out after the fact that these individuals who should not be banned or should not have suspension on entry into the United States not have that happen, and to realize that it's more benefit for them to come into the United States than to hold them outside the United States during this particular time, more importantly than any time. Okay, so please, if you have any other questions or you need more information on this, don't forget to write the comments below the video after you watch it. And I promise I'll get you the information that I need to get you. I see there's a couple questions. We don't have a lot here, but let me see. The merit-based immigration executive order, from what I understand, new orders could only affect the issuance of new visas, correct? Existing visas can't be canceled. No, they will not cancel a visa that you already have. If you've already gotten your visa and it's in your passport, immigrant visa or a non-immigrant visa, unlikely that they're going to cancel it, especially an immigrant visa. If you qualify for the visa and you got the visa, it won't be canceled. If you're in a situation that you are in that 6-month period, if you get an immigrant visa, you have to enter the country within 6 months, you need to contact the consulate immediately and discuss it with them to make sure that that's not going to be an issue. But if you've gotten the immigrant visa, you will probably most likely never have it revoked unless you do something. Obviously, that's going to cause it to revoke because you're going to lose your qualification of getting it in the first place. But with regard to everything going on, unlikely that anyone would ever revoke your immigrant visa. Okay. Any other questions that you have, please, like I said, put them below the video. I hope this I hope this helps somebody out there that's watching. I hope that some of you got some of this information that's going to allow you now to take steps to come into the United States. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe right now. Hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to also hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified every time a video comes out, which I usually release them weekly, and I sometimes will do these live ones in between, or sometimes I'll do a bonus video during the week also if something comes up, but definitely weekly. So you'll have all the update information that you need to be successful and to get what you need to get as an immigrant or as a non-immigrant sitting somewhere in the world. Okay, I hope all of you are safe. Good morning, good evening, and good night, depending where you are in the world. And I look forward to talking to you all next time and seeing you on our next video live or on the next video I tape. All right, take care and have a great rest of your day.